They never knew she was ace combat pilot until emergency required her to fly F-22 Raptor. This story begins at Edwards Air Force Base in California, where Senior Airman Jessica Chen was completing her morning routine as an aircraft maintenance technician. At 32 years old, Jessica had spent the last 8 years working on the flight line, servicing the most advanced fighter jets in the U.S. Air Force arsenal, but everyone assumed she was just another skilled mechanic who'd never set foot in a cockpit. But even her closest colleagues had no idea they were working alongside one of the most decorated combat pilots in modern Air Force history. "Chen, we need you to run diagnostics on Raptor 7, called Technical Sergeant Mike Wrench Thompson, pointing toward the sleek F-22 that had just returned from a training mission. Pilot reported some unusual readings in the flight control system. Jessica nodded and grabbed her diagnostic equipment, approaching the $150 million stealth fighter with the same methodical precision she applied to every aircraft that came through the maintenance bay. To everyone watching, she looked like a competent technician doing routine work. What they couldn't see was the way Jessica's eyes cataloged every detail of the F-22's configuration, the way she unconsciously evaluated the aircraft's combat readiness, or the muscle memory that made her hands move across the controls with the familiarity of someone who'd flown this exact aircraft in combat zones they'd never heard of. "Chen," Sergeant Thompson continued, "Captain Rodriguez is coming down to observe the diagnostic. Make sure everything's by the book. You know how pilots get about their birds." Jessica almost smiled at the irony. If only Thompson knew that she'd logged more hours in F-22 Raptors than Captain Rodriguez had logged in total flight time, or that she'd earned call signs in 3 different combat theaters before trading her flight suit for coveralls. Jessica Chen wasn't just another maintenance technician who'd enlisted out of high school. She was former Captain Jessica Chen, the first female pilot to earn ace status in F-22 Raptor combat operations, with 7 confirmed kills during classified missions over hostile territory that officially never happened. But 8 years ago, Jessica had been declared dead after a deep cover operation in foreign airspace went wrong. The official records showed that Captain Chen's F-22 had been shot down with no survivors, but the truth was that Jessica had been extracted by Special Operations Forces after completing a mission so classified that her survival had to be buried along with the operation's details. The Pentagon had given her a choice: accept a new identity and disappear from military aviation forever, or risk exposing operations that could destabilize international relations. Jessica had chosen to protect the mission, trading her pilot's wings for anonymity and a new life as an enlisted maintenance specialist. For 8 years, she'd worked on the aircraft she'd once commanded, watching younger pilots climb into cockpits she was no longer allowed to occupy. She'd diagnosed problems in systems she knew better than the engineers who'd designed them, and she'd watched training exercises conducted by pilots who'd learned their techniques from manuals she'd helped write. The hardest part wasn't the loss of rank or recognition. It was watching F-22s take off for missions where her experience could have saved lives, while she remained grounded by circumstances beyond her control. "Chen," Technical Sergeant Thompson's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Captain Rodriguez is here for the briefing." Captain Maria Rodriguez approached the F-22 with the confident stride of a pilot who'd earned her place in one of the Air Force's most elite squadrons. She was good. Jessica could tell from the way Rodriguez moved around the aircraft, but she was also young, maybe 26 years old, with the kind of textbook precision that came from excellent training but limited combat experience. "Sergeant Thompson, what's the status on my bird?" "Chen's running the full diagnostic, ma'am. She'll have the report ready in 15 minutes. Captain Rodriguez nodded and walked over to where Jessica was working. "Airman Chen, right? I've heard good things about your work. How long have you been working on Raptors?" Jessica looked up from her diagnostic tablet, meeting Rodriguez's eyes. 8 years, ma'am. I know these aircraft pretty well." "That's impressive. Most maintenance techs don't get that much specialized experience with F-22s. Did you ever consider flight training?" The question hit Jessica like a physical blow. For 8 years, nobody had asked her about flying. Everyone just assumed that maintenance personnel were grounded by choice, not circumstance. "I thought about it, ma'am," Jessica replied carefully, "but I'm happy with my current assignment." Captain Rodriguez studied Jessica with the analytical gaze that all good pilots developed, the ability to read people and situations with the same precision they use to read instruments and tactical displays. "Chen, you move around this aircraft like you understand it from the inside out. That's not typical for maintenance personnel, even experienced ones. You sure you never flew anything before?" Before Jessica could answer, the base-wide emergency alarm began screaming across Edwards Air Force Base. "All personnel! All personnel!" The base commander's voice boomed over the emergency communication system. "We have confirmed hostile aircraft approaching restricted airspace. This is not a drill. All combat-ready pilots report to operations immediately." Captain Rodriguez was already running toward the operations building when the second announcement came through. "All F-22 Raptor pilots report for immediate scramble. Unknown aircraft have penetrated our outer defense perimeter." Jessica watched Rodriguez disappear into the operations center, then returned to her diagnostic work, trying to ignore the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with the sound of combat alerts. For 8 years, she'd trained herself to be a spectator during moments like this, watching other pilots handle situations she'd once specialized in. 20 minutes later, Technical Sergeant Thompson came running back to the flight line, his face grim with urgency. "Chen, we've got a problem. Captain Rodriguez and Lieutenant Williams were scrambled 15 minutes ago, but Rodriguez's F-22 developed hydraulic failure during takeoff. She had to emergency land, and Williams's aircraft took battle damage from whatever's out there." Jessica's blood ran cold. "How bad is the damage?" "Williams is alive, but his Raptor is down. Rodriguez's bird needs at least 4 hours for hydraulic system replacement. And here's the real problem. Those are our only 2 qualified F-22 pilots on base today. Everyone else is deployed or on leave." Jessica felt her carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. "What about the incoming threat?" Thompson's expression was grim. "Radar shows 4 unidentified fighters, definitely hostile, heading toward restricted military installations. They'll be in range of critical targets in 30 minutes. Without F-22 intercept capability, we can't stop them." "What's the base commander's plan?" "That's the problem, Chen. We don't have one. The nearest F-22 qualified pilots are at Nellis, 4 hours away. Ground-based defenses might not be enough if these hostiles have advanced countermeasures." Jessica stared at the F-22 she'd been servicing, her mind racing through tactical scenarios she hadn't considered in 8 years. The aircraft was fully functional, fully armed, and ready for combat. What it lacked was a pilot. "Sergeant Thompson," Jessica said carefully, "what if I told you there might be another option?" Thompson looked at her with confusion. "Chen, what are you talking about? We need F-22 pilots, not maintenance techs." Jessica took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would change everything about her carefully hidden life. "Sergeant, I need you to call Colonel Harrison and tell him that Captain Jessica Phoenix Chen is alive and ready for combat duty." Thompson stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "Chen, what the hell are you talking about?" 8 years ago, the Air Force declared me KIA after a classified mission. I've been hiding as a maintenance tech ever since. But if hostile aircraft are threatening American installations, my cover doesn't matter anymore." Technical Sergeant Thompson looked at Jessica like she'd lost her mind. "Chen, I don't know what kind of stress you're under, but claiming to be a dead pilot isn't going to solve our problem." Jessica pulled out her diagnostic tablet and quickly accessed files that Thompson had never seen before. Classified maintenance records that contained technical details no enlisted personnel should have known. "Sergeant, look at these diagnostic patterns. I've been tracking F-22 performance metrics that aren't in any maintenance manual. I know these aircraft because I've flown them in combat." Thompson studied the data, his expression shifting from skepticism to confusion. The technical analysis Jessica had compiled was impossibly detailed, showing understanding of flight dynamics and combat systems that went far beyond routine maintenance knowledge. "Chen, how do you know this stuff?" "Because for 4 years, I was Captain Jessica Phoenix Chen, F-22 squadron leader and the youngest female ace in Air Force history." I was declared KIA during a Black Ops mission that officially never happened. The Pentagon gave me a new identity to protect classified operations. Thompson stared at her for a long moment, then grabbed his radio. Colonel Harrison, this is Sergeant Thompson on the flight line. I need you down here immediately. We might have a solution to our pilot shortage. 5 minutes later, Colonel Harrison arrived at the flight line with an expression that suggested he was expecting to handle a maintenance emergency, not a conversation that would challenge everything he thought he knew about his personnel. Sergeant Thompson, what's so urgent that you're pulling me away from crisis management? Jessica stepped forward, her posture shifting from enlisted maintenance tech to officer bearing. Colonel Harrison, my name is Captain Jessica Phoenix Chen. I was declared killed in action 8 years ago during Operation Silent Thunder. I've been serving under deep cover as an enlisted maintenance specialist, but the current threat requires me to break cover. Colonel Harrison studied Jessica with the sharp gaze of an officer who'd seen enough classified operations to know that impossible claims sometimes turned out to be true. Airman Chen, if you're making false claims about classified operations. Sir, Operation Silent Thunder, 2016, deep penetration mission over hostile territory. 7 enemy aircraft engaged, 7 kills confirmed. My F-22 took critical damage, and I was extracted by Special Operations Forces. The Pentagon classified my survival to protect operational security. Harrison's expression changed completely. Operation Silent Thunder was so classified that fewer than 20 people in the entire Air Force knew the details. Chen, what was your call sign during that operation? Phoenix, sir. Captain Jessica Phoenix Chen, 94th Fighter Squadron. Colonel Harrison grabbed his secure radio. Operations, this is Harrison. I need immediate verification on a classified personnel file. Captain Jessica Chen, service number 123-45-6789, declared KIA during Operation Silent Thunder. The response came back within minutes. Colonel, that file is beyond top secret classification. Confirming Captain Chen was officially KIA, but operation details are need to know only. Harrison looked at Jessica with new understanding. Captain Chen, if you're really who you claim to be, this changes everything. But I need proof that you can still fly. Jessica walked over to the F-22 she'd been servicing, her movements now carrying the confident precision of a combat pilot rather than a maintenance technician. Colonel, this aircraft is mission ready. All systems are green, full combat loadout, and I know every bolt and rivet in this machine. More importantly, I've been tracking the incoming hostile aircraft through our radar feeds, and I recognize their flight patterns. What do you mean you recognize them? Sir, those aren't random hostiles. That's a coordinated attack formation using advanced electronic warfare tactics. I've faced similar attacks before. If you put me in that cockpit, I can stop them. Colonel Harrison made the command decision that would either save the base or end his career. Captain Chen, consider yourself reactivated for emergency duty. You have authorization to engage hostile aircraft as necessary. Jessica nodded and began her pre-flight preparations, with movements so fluid and automatic that even Colonel Harrison, who'd been around F-22s for 15 years, was impressed by her efficiency. Captain, Harrison said as Jessica conducted her walk-around inspection, it's been 8 years since you've flown combat. Are you sure you're ready for this? Jessica paused her inspection and looked at the F-22 with eyes that held 8 years of suppressed longing. Colonel, a pilot doesn't forget how to fly any more than they forget how to breathe. What I've been doing for 8 years isn't hiding from who I am. It's remembering every day what I used to be capable of. She climbed into the F-22's cockpit with the smooth efficiency of someone returning home after a long absence. Her hands found controls without hesitation, her eyes scanned instruments with practiced precision, and her body settled into the ejection seat like it had been custom-fitted for her. Phoenix to control, Jessica's voice came through the radio with authority that hadn't been heard on Edwards's frequency in 8 years. Requesting immediate clearance for combat air patrol. I have 4 bogies on radar, bearing 270, altitude 30,000 feet. Phoenix, this is control. Cleared for takeoff, runway 27. Be advised, hostile aircraft are equipped with advanced jamming systems. Previous intercept attempts have failed. Jessica advanced the F-22's throttles and felt the familiar surge of power that came from controlling the most advanced fighter aircraft ever built. The Raptor accelerated down the runway with the smooth authority of precision engineering, and Jessica felt 8 years of enforced gravity fall away as the aircraft lifted into California sky. Control. Phoenix is airborne and climbing. Switching to combat frequency. Time to see if these hostiles remember how to deal with an ace. As Jessica climbed toward 30,000 feet, she felt muscle memory taking over, the complex mental calculations of air-to-air combat, the three-dimensional awareness that separated good pilots from legendary ones, and the calm focus that had made her the youngest female ace in Air Force history. Through her radar display, she could see the 4 hostile aircraft maintaining their approach toward restricted installations. Their flight pattern was sophisticated, designed to overwhelm single aircraft intercepts and defeat conventional defensive tactics. But Jessica hadn't survived Operation Silent Thunder by using conventional tactics. Phoenix, this is Control. Hostile aircraft are jamming our tracking systems. We're losing radar lock. Jessica smiled grimly as her F-22's advanced sensors began penetrating the electronic warfare screen that had defeated previous intercept attempts. The Raptor's stealth capabilities meant she could approach the hostile formation without being detected, while her advanced radar could cut through jamming that blinded conventional systems. Control. Phoenix has clear targeting data on all 4 hostiles. They're flying in a diamond formation, but they're not configured for air-to-air combat. These aircraft are loaded for ground attack. Phoenix, that changes our tactical picture completely. If they're planning strikes on ground installations. Roger, Control. Beginning intercept sequence. Jessica maneuvered her F-22 into an attack position that would have been impossible for most pilots, approaching from below and behind, using the hostile aircraft's own formation against them. Her combat experience told her that these pilots were skilled, but they were flying predictable attack patterns that made them vulnerable to precisely the kind of unconventional approach she specialized in. Phoenix engaging lead hostile. Jessica's first missile strike was perfect, an AIM-120 AMRAAM that struck the formation leader before their jamming systems could react. The lead aircraft exploded in a fireball that immediately scattered the remaining 3 hostiles. But instead of retreating, the surviving aircraft turned toward Jessica's position with coordination that suggested they'd been briefed on fighting F-22 Raptors. Control, remaining hostiles are adapting faster than expected. These aren't random attackers, they're specifically trained for this engagement. Jessica found herself in the kind of multi-aircraft dogfight that had made her reputation 8 years ago. The 3 remaining hostiles were good, better than good, and they were flying aircraft with capabilities that shouldn't have existed outside of classified American programs. Phoenix, radar shows you're outnumbered 3-1. Do you need support? Jessica maneuvered her F-22 through a series of defensive maneuvers that pushed both her aircraft and her own physical limits. 8 years of maintenance work had kept her in contact with F-22 capabilities, but flying the aircraft in combat was an entirely different challenge. Control, I've got this. Phoenix is back. What followed was a display of aerial combat mastery that Control personnel would talk about for decades. Jessica used every advanced tactic she'd learned during her original combat career, combined with 8 years of intimate knowledge of F-22 systems gained through maintenance work. She defeated the second hostile with a gun kill that required precisely the kind of close-range maneuvering that most pilots avoided in stealth aircraft. The third hostile fell to a missile shot that Jessica made while inverted at Mach 1.5. The final aircraft was destroyed during a head-to-head engagement that demonstrated exactly why Jessica had earned ace status before her 25th birthday. Control, Phoenix. All hostile aircraft neutralized, threat eliminated. The radio silence that followed lasted for nearly 30 seconds, everyone on the ground processing the fact that a maintenance technician had just single-handedly defeated a coordinated attack that conventional defenses couldn't stop. Phoenix, this is Colonel Harrison. Outstanding work, Captain. Return to base immediately. We need to debrief this engagement. As Jessica guided her F-22 back toward Edwards Air Force Base, she realized that 8 years of hiding were finally over. She'd protected classified operations by disappearing, but today she'd protected American lives by reappearing. Control. Phoenix requesting flyby for landing approach. Phoenix, you're cleared for whatever kind of approach you want. Jessica brought her F-22 down in a victory roll that announced to everyone on Edwards Air Force Base that Captain Jessica Phoenix Chen was officially back from the dead. 6 months later, Colonel Jessica Phoenix Chen stood in the briefing room at Edwards Air Force Base, addressing a class of F-22 pilots who hung on every word she spoke. Her promotion had been immediate, and her reinstatement complete, but more importantly, her return to active duty had revolutionized how the Air Force thought about pilot retention and advanced combat tactics. "The most important lesson I can teach you," Jessica told her students, "is that flying an F-22 isn't about the technology. It's about understanding the aircraft so completely that it becomes an extension of your own capabilities." One of the young pilots raised her hand. "Colonel, what was it like to be away from flying for 8 years?" Jessica smiled, thinking about the long journey from hidden maintenance tech to acknowledged ace. "It taught me that being a pilot isn't something you are. It's something you become every single time you climb into a cockpit. 8 years of working on these aircraft made me a better pilot, not a worse one." After the briefing, Jessica walked out to the flight line where her personal F-22 waited for the afternoon training mission. Technical Sergeant Thompson was conducting pre-flight inspection, and he saluted as she approached. "Everything looks good, Colonel. Your bird is ready for flight." Jessica returned the salute, then clapped Thompson on the shoulder. "Thanks, Mike, for everything you did that day." "Colonel, can I ask you something? Did you ever regret giving up flying for all those years?" Jessica looked at the F-22, then at the other aircraft on the flight line, then at the young pilots preparing for their own training missions. "Mike, I learned something during those 8 years. Being grounded doesn't mean you stop being a pilot. It just means you're preparing for the day when flying matters most." Jessica climbed into her F-22 and began the pre-flight sequence that would take her back into the sky where she belonged. But she carried with her the knowledge that legends aren't just made in the air. They're preserved by people who remember that some skills are too important to lose, even when they have to be hidden.